What is an RUD? RUD stands for Rapid Unscheduled Disassembly. Why is this relevant? So, rapid unscheduled disassemblies are relevant especially inside of the space community and inside of space companies such as SpaceX and NASA. Today we're going to be talking about Starship from SpaceX. This is the Mars vehicle that is going to hopefully one day take us to Mars in the near future being 2024. Ever since I was little, I've been studying and watching all of SpaceX's launches, especially their Falcon 9 launches and tests, and in the future I hope to become a flight engineer for the Starship program. So, Starship, why is it relevant? So today we're going to be talking about Starship SN8 to be exact, which stands for serial number 8. So a main question that we get is, why is there frost or white stuff on the outside of SN8 before launch? And the answer to that is that when frost builds up on the side, it's because when we're loading propellant that's really cool and chilled, we cool and chill the propellant to make the fuel more efficient, and so we can load more of it onto the ship. And we cool it down so when it loads into the header tanks, right, when it gets into the header tanks, it makes contact with the ambient temperature aluminum of the actual ship, and that makes contact with the aluminum of the ship and the ambient temperature of the outside. So that's what creates frost. It's like the same thing when you take out a really cold bottle of water and you place it out in room temperature. In a few minutes you can see there's precipitation on the outside. That's what's happening on Starship. So when we get closer to T-0 or liftoff, what's actually happening on the inside of SN8? Well, one of the first things after propellant loading on SN8 is to switch over to the vehicle's internal power source, which means that SN8's power starts coming from itself instead of from an external source, let's say Mission Command. This is one of the many operations that happen before the engines light up during takeoff or T-0. And when the timer hits T-0, it's go time. All three of the Raptor engines light up at full throttle and thrust SN8's 240,000 pound aluminum body into the air. So now what? What happens during ascent? So during ascent, SN8 actually throttles its engines as low as possible while still maintaining enough thrust to ascend. SN8 does this because this is a test and not a real orbit insertion. This means that SN8 is so powerful that if the engines kept firing at full throttle, they would make it to space very quickly. At some point during ascent, SN8's first engine flames out. This is supposed to happen. SN8 does this because eventually it needs to stop ascending. So therefore Raptor engine 2 flames out as well. By this time SN8 is going very slow, but it's still ascending and still going up. So quickly after Raptor engine 2 flames out, Raptor engine 3 flames out, which brings us to our next question. Why does Raptor engine 3 flame out? So 3 engines flame out because Starship needs to stop ascending in order to keep going with the test flight. So when the 3rd engine flames out, Starship needs to stop ascending. So SN8 starts falling. When it starts falling, SN8 uses its ailerons to perform a maneuver called the belly flop maneuver. Right? SN8 does this because eventually when Starship enters Mars' atmosphere, it needs to disperse as much heat on its heat tiles. And when you are having the vehicle belly flop itself, there's more surface area, so therefore reducing the amount of heat put in one place on the vehicle. So as it belly flops back down to the ground, it resembles a skydiver. When SN8 crosses a 200-meter range, its first and second Raptor engines reignite and fire in the direction that SN8 needs to become in order to come in vertically. So SN8's 3rd Raptor engine doesn't reignite. Why? So Raptor engine number 3 didn't ignite because it was low on pressure in the header tanks, which regulate the fuel injection into the engines, thus not being able to relight. So why did the engines emit a green flame on their final landing burn? This happened because since the header tanks were low on pressure, the engines were not getting the right mix of fuel. So the engine was literally ripping itself apart and throwing the engine's copper lining into the fuel mix. And when copper burns, the flame is green, thus emitting the green flame. So when SN8 flips vertically, it needs a certain amount of thrust to make a soft landing. And since the engines were deteriorating and getting copper thrown into the engine, there was no thrust coming from these two engines. And SN8 hit the ground a little too fast and gave us spectacular fireworks. So in the end, SN8 achieved so much more than what it was expected of it. Elon Musk, the founder and CEO of SpaceX, said that SN8 had a 1 in 3 chance of performing everything that it did. SN8 is also the first vehicle to ever perform these high technical maneuvers and was also the first of its kind. So therefore, SN8 was a success and a beacon of hope for the future of spaceflight. Next up,